Could the Cleveland Cavaliers really get four All-Stars? In today's episode, I'm joined by Zach Weiss from across the Cavs to answer that very question. Hi, and welcome to the Sports Ethos Cleveland Cavaliers podcast, your safe space to celebrate and nerd out about the Cavs. My name's Zach, I'm your host, and if you want to join the discussion, use hashtag CavsCast across X and Bsky. Here's my discussion with Zach. All right, I'm here with Zach Weiss from across the Cavs to talk All-Stars today. Zach, I have to say that I think you have the best name in Cavs media, but that might just be me showing my bias. So for starters, thanks for being here and doing this.
Yeah, appreciate it. I could say the same to you. Obviously, we're not here uh, to say nice things for 60 minutes, because if we were, I think we could probably take 2 or 3 hours. But I appreciate it. Looking forward to talking Cavs, because this year, man, as we're going to get to, this year has been very special, and it's the best 38 game start we've seen from the Cavs, even better than when they had LeBron and co the first time and the second time.
Yeah, for sure. And you have a frame of reference for that because you, if the internet is correct in this, you started across the Cavs back in like October of 2019. Is that accurate? Are you actually, what is that now? 7 years deep into this Cavs content game?
Yeah, so technically 7 years, but six. This is the sixth season. And it's funny because when Across the Cavs started, I was podcastless at that time. And there was an opening to host a podcast, and it was an actual job listing, just and for another sports network. And then I stepped in when it was brand new with a Twitter account at 4 followers and no episodes, and have run with it from day one. 5 months in, it's like, oh yeah, COVID. Oh yeah, no Cavs for 10 months. And I kind of figured some things out. I'd had, I think, 3 players on, 2 or 3 players on the pod, and just trying to figure out where I stand, what I'm doing with it. And it's been a great 6 years. It's led to some really cool opportunities. And everybody that I've talked to, from people that are associated as announcers with the Cavs, to writers with the Cavs, to former players of the Cavs, to just fans of the team, have all been very inviting, very generous with their time. And this pod, for a Cavs fan that hadn't been to a state of Ohio until January of 2023 in his entire life, this pod has opened many doors for me within Cleveland and within the team, and it's definitely made my fandom feel a lot more special and connected to other people, growing up as the only Cavs fan in my upbringing.
Is this the most fun team that you can remember in your time, either covering or just watching as a Cavs fan?
I would say yes and no, and call me crazy, but
Crazy.
truthfully, I really enjoyed, this is going to be a psychotic thing to say, I really enjoyed 2011 to 14, because I think we kind of started, and this was pre-covering. Covering, yes, but those years kind of taught you, and just being online and reading a lot, being outside of Cleveland, it taught you a lot about who real fans are and what they think. Every time I'm running ball and I say, oh, I'm a Cavs fan, I was like, ah, that stinks, man. LeBron left, whatever. And then when he comes back, it's kind of the new gauge of where do people actually stand on the Cavs. And I think we're finally learning now, the national media, for the first time without LeBron in almost 30 years, is genuinely respecting them. And it's been a really long time. But I liked those years. Those are the first non-LeBron years of my fandom. And just watching them compete every night and doing their best, and then they're figuring out a direction and where to go. It's been fun from day one. I've been a cast, what, 22 seasons now, covering it for 6. But those 4 years, I think, for me, ingrained my fandom permanently. It's like, yeah, they're losing, so what? I still went to games. When they'd come to the greater New York area, I'd see them all across the Northeast. And I loved it. I don't care what the record is. I'm watching the Cavs. I'm taking 3 hours a night, 3 nights a week, 4 nights a week, and they're a big passion of mine. On and off covering, I'll watch. Even if I'm not posting, if I'm busy, I'll still catch the game. And that's the long answer. But this is the most successful team. And I think it's hard to not marvel at what they're doing, given what we expected and how we were even 3 years ago, 4 years ago. So, and the Cavs are special. And I think that all the passions in my life, all the genuine hobbies, Cavs are always going to be right there in the first, second spots. It's hard not to love this team and this organization.
Yeah, in this year, the one that it reminds me of is those early LeBron years, the ones where it was genuinely just fun. When LeBron was super young, everybody had their silly handshakes. They were doing like
Yeah.
the choreographed celebrations and intros and fake photography or whatever, just it felt like they were just genuinely having a good time. When when LeBron came back, it felt more like a relief when they would win games and like thank God, and expectations
Yeah.
were so incredibly high and vibes were not always. This team just seems like the vibes are just immaculate from really from day one of the season, but it's just continued and I don't know. It's been invigorating to watch from them, just on a night to night basis to me.
Yeah, everyone seems to get along really well. All these guys were going to Browns games and Guardians playoff games together well before the year even kicked off and into the season as well for the Browns, obviously. And I think it makes a difference, when a guy like Ty Jerome can miss 80 games, but he was with them all off season. He was part of every team photo, every dog chain, every celebration. He had to wait a long time. He's come back. Unfortunately, he's probably gonna miss some time with an illness, but he's been just so massive for them. You see some of these other guys, Travers and Thor, still pretty raw within the organization, but they seem to be getting along with everybody. Craig Porter last year, big part of the core, even if he's not on the court, given what he went through with them a season ago. And every time one of the core four is interviewed, they're just raising up the other three. When Serena was like, vote Evan for All Star, Evan's like, yeah, we got four of those guys. Vote for everybody. And it's easy for these guys to get along when they're in front of the camera because they're doing all this behind the scenes. And I'm sure that goes to Kenny and the front office and everybody putting this group together and these guys taking the time to seek each other out and get to know each other as humans because then as players, it's really easy to connect on the floor.
Yeah. So you said the word that we're here to discuss. So we'll jump right into it. We are as Cavs fans ultimately hoping that the Cavs do in fact get four All-Stars this year. I believe that has only happened like 9 times in NBA history, and the Cavs I think do have a legitimate case for that to be a possibility. Is it likely? I'm not so sure that it's likely, but they do have four deserving players for consideration. There's just there's still only 12 spots. There's 15 teams. It's hard to get four from any one team, but we're going to explore it anyways. So, based on the last update on all of the All-Star voting fan returns that came out a day after the Thunder win, Donovan Mitchell had stayed at 2. Evan Mobley had jumped 2 spots from 10 to 8 in the front court. And while we can, argue about, his standing within the front court, I feel like those two are kind of a lock at this point in time. The two Cavs that are worth, well, I guess maybe I should stop there. Do you agree that those two are a lock?
Well, yeah, obviously,
Okay.
Don's getting in. It doesn't matter what his numbers say. Clearly he's got a fantastic fan base. Truthfully, in most years, I mean, Don's playing like this. I would argue he probably shouldn't be a starter, but I would also say that the Cavs would lose a short piece if he wasn't a starter. I think it's the fact that he's done this on, and the team has been this good that he's got his spot. The Cavs had 10 or 11 less wins, even 5 or 6 less wins. I think there'd be arguments against him. I think he's a lock, and I absolutely think Evan Mobley should be a lock. I think he's shown it nationally. He's shown his impact. All the extra analytics, the offensive increases across the board, the efficiency, shooting threes in just every area. I don't think he has a weak part to his offensive game anymore. And I feel like he's done enough to show everybody as he slowly moves up in the vote to sneak in as a reserve.
Yeah. So that leaves us with two, right? There's two that are worth talking about in lobbying for and pushing the propaganda for, and those are Darius Garland, who was not in the top 10 of the first fan voting results, and he jumped up into the ninth spot for the backcourt in the latest, and then Jarrett Allen, who still is getting no love from the fans because apparently fans don't know ball. But
They do not.
um, the thing that I think is hard to remember, like I even heard this on the Hoop Collective. Brian Windhurst even didn't remember that there is still positional merit when it comes to all-star voting. um, there are restrictions to like who gets in this first wave. Now they start to go out the window when you start talking about um, things like injury replacements and whatnot. But there is still like the caveat of um, you know the positional needs on or positional requirements for those 12 spots, which are two guards and three front court players. I'm going to just probably call them bigs this whole time because that just makes it easier in my brain. You get
Yeah.
two guards and three bigs as starters, and then you get two guards and three bigs as reserves, and then you get two wild cards on each bench that can be, either or. But that ultimately puts you at a point where you have a guarantee of four guards and a guarantee of six bigs, and then two, I don't know, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
And that matters in this conversation a lot because I think, at least in my purview of how this whole thing would shake out, is Darius Garland is probably the most worthy of the two, all stars when it comes to him or Jarrett Allen, just based on merit. However, he's got more competition for fewer guaranteed spots on the roster than Jarrett Allen does. And so you start to look at the possibility that you may even be in a weird place where the Cavs only get, call it only, where they only get three of the four, and one of them's not Darius Garland, which feels blasphemous in my brain. But when you really start to do the exercise, which we're going to do today, like that's something I'm like trying to keep in my mind and be
Yes.
like realistic about.
Well, my question, Zach, is, and I have no issue with this. To me, I still think it's valid. Do you consider an all-star replacement to still be an all-star?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I still consider them to be an all-star because they were given that, honor. And I don't think that we as fans think back to, I don't know, the all-star game of 5 years ago. We may not ever actually think back to the all-star game of 5 years ago, period. But if we do, we're not like picking and choosing and remembering specifically, oh, but that guy was really only there as an injury replacement. So does he
Yeah.
really count? Like, I consider them all stars, and if for no other reason, I think that um it I think that there's a case to be made that there could be more all stars selected to begin with. And so if I don't care how you get in, you get in. Unless you come down to something where, maybe it's maybe you're talking about like award season at the end of the year, or you have to like split hairs between two guys for some honor for some reason that I can't even think of what that situation necessarily would be. But you start splitting hairs and you're like, well, this one was an all-star, this one was too, but he got in as an injury replacement. The other one got there on, the first wave or whatever. Like maybe you
Yeah.
start to tip a pendulum, but I still consider them an all-star. Yes.
The only reason I ask is we talk about the four. Well, the first name obviously being Mo Williams' lone All Star appearance was as a replacement way back in the day, going back to that 08-09 season. And we're going to talk about the other two. Yeah, there he is. I don't know if that was Dewan
He's
Wagner
back there.
or Williams. I couldn't actually tell.
No,
Um,
the room is pretty much a shrine to the early LeBron Cavs that it's like they were my first
yeah.
Cavs team that I was a fan of. So the whole room is kind of theirs.
Who's in the Navy?
This one over here.
Yeah. What do we got there?
Uh, yeah, this one is Boobie Gibson.
Very nice.
The Navy that's actually behind my chair that you can't see is LeBron.
Yeah. And then we got what?
Uh,
Ben Wallace?
yeah, Ben Wallace is over there, and you can get a peek of another wine that's up here sometimes when the camera hits it, and sometimes it doesn't. That is actually maybe my favorite one that's up there, just for the sake of you have that.
Mm-hmm.
That is Delonte West.
Oh, yeah. No, that is a good one. And then the reason I bring up the All-Star replacement, I've been doing a lot of just looking back at the last two teams I remember that had had four All-Stars, and that being the Hawks, that everyone keeps for some reason comparing the Cavs to. They're not them. They're better than them. No disrespect to that team that also had an 18 game winning streak in their season and ended up winning 60. No disrespect to them. That was an incredible team that I don't think gets enough respect by anybody. Because when you win 60 games without a 17 per game score, I think that's nuts and an amazing system. And the second team was that Pistons team of that 05-06. But Corver got in as an injury replacement, which I confirmed with some research earlier today, which is the only reason I bring that up. But I digress back to you to continue the conversation. Very excited to prove why I personally think if we're comparing history, why I do think they should have four. Not regardless of who they're competing against. Because I could name 7, 8, 9, 10 point guards, total guards in the East, that you could argue are better statistical producers than Garland, but it doesn't argue that they're better players or more efficient than Garland this season, who's playing a lesser role, putting up the numbers he is as a co-number one with two other guys. So,
Well, let's start with Garland then. So we'll go there. Um, just as a refresher for anyone that may not have it in front of their face like I do, this was the most recent fan voting returns. The fans had LaMelo at one, who's winning the social media vote. They had Mitchell at two, Damian Lillard at three, Jalen Brunson at four, Trey Young at five, Tyrese Maxey at six, Cade Cunningham at seven, Jordan Poole for some reason
yep.
at eight, Darius Garland at nine, and Tyler Hero at 10. That was the guard group that the fans had. And while
Yeah.
some of that to me is fairly laughable, as to some of the guys ahead of Garland, there are dudes that have legit all-star cases in there, right?
Yeah, and what I would say is no disrespect to Jordan Poole is actually having a really impressive season, and I'm glad that he's been able to put the events with Draymond from a few years ago behind him and actually just play good ball on a team that actually does have good pieces. They still have just no depth and injury problems. They got to trade some vets, but he has been good, not knocking, but he should not be there. Hero's been fantastic, but they're a middling team, and he hasn't proven to be as consistent. He still has his down moments. I would obviously put Garland over Ball. They're 8 and 28. He's taking the most shots. I think he's taking the most shots per certain amount of time since Wilt 60 years ago this year, and they're not winning anything. And he's missed 13 games. The only guards in the East I'm taking ahead of Garland probably be my number five. Let me actually make sure I have the math right. Garland be my number five guard in the East. I'm also putting him ahead of Maxey. Maxey's done nothing to win them games. It does not matter who's been out. If you're an all-star level player, your team can win without your other dudes. That's what the Cavs proved last year with everybody in and everybody out. I would take Dame over Garland. I would take Donovan in par with Garland. I would take Trey Young. The Hawks should be a lot worse given what their offseason was, and Trey to me has been incredible. And I would take Cade over Garland because they're playing the best ball of his career with JB, and he's put up insane numbers. But there should be enough guard spots still. We're going to get 5 or 6 guards. So if we get 6, Donovan, Dame, Brunson, Trey, Cade, Garland. Now, obviously, I might be missing people that didn't even make the top 10 vote. Tyrese should be left off this year. That's not a debate. His numbers are down, and the team, even though they've been hot, I don't think has the record to guarantee his spot. Chicago, as good as Zach LaVine has been, I would also consider him to be a small forward on this year's Bulls team, not a shooting guard based on that. So he would not qualify as a guard. I'd be iffy on putting him in over, but think he would merit a conversation. I don't think LaMelo belongs. They don't win enough. If he gets in on the fan vote, obviously it's going to have to come down to Cade, Trey or Garland, and I really don't think K deserves to be snubbed again. Magic don't have an all-star guard. The Nets don't have an all-star guard. Trying to think of these other teams I may have missed. I don't think Drew or White are all stars. I don't think anyone's going to be mad at that. Derek White should be all defense. Drew Holiday should be all defense again. They're not all star players. I don't think Hero just belongs yet. I think in another year he'd definitely get in. It's also crazy to me that Bam's not even top 10 in this because PG snuck in as a three, and Embiid, who's played 10 games, is in here, and Franz, who's not even going to play in the game, is in here, and suspended Jimmy is in here, and 7 games played Paolo, who deserves to be considered, but is somehow also in here. Shout out to Cat, who makes it harder for some other guys to get in. But that's why I think Garland, he's averaging 21 and 7. Just to compare him to the point guards, the All-Star point guards of the 4 All-Star teams. Zach Chauncey averaged 19 and 9, shooting only 41% from the field, with a 4 assists to turnover. And Jeff Teague in his All-Star year, who made it regular, only 16 and 7, shooting 46%. I do know the NBA was less offense heavy at this time, but 16 and 7 assists, shooting 46 from the fields, 34 from 3 for the season. Obviously, Garland is a clear rung and a half above where Teague was, and also doesn't have the clutch rating that Garland has this year. So that, for me, is my argument for Darius as the third All-Star with Evan and Donovan before we get to Jarrett.
Yeah, I think if we're doing if we're doing the guards in the process of elimination, I think that Mitchell is a shoe in. The other shoe in that I think is Jalen Brunson. I
Yep,
don't think there's
easy.
any question or doubt in anybody's mind that Jalen Brunson is an all-star. The thing
Agree.
that's going to be tricky and weird and make this complicated and awkward and wonky is potentially the LaMelo Ball of it all. And it's because he's going to win the social media vote. He's going to have the top voting from the fans because he is a highlight machine and the kids absolutely love LaMelo Ball.
Yes, they do.
How how much will the media and player votes, like, the way that it's split is the fans get 50% and then the media and the players get, like, they make the other 50 in 25% apiece. Are they going to be able to persuade enough of the final, voting tally for the starters to get LaMelo Ball out of there? Because in my mind, there's a very real possibility that the answer to that is no, and he's actually going to end up being a starter and kind of like uh throw some of the math off for Garland. Because I would agree with you when it comes to, if LaMelo Ball is not voted in as a starter, I also believe that Darius Garland is a more deserving case than him, despite the
Yep.
fact that he is scoring a ton, because that's pretty much what he does. But again, I just don't know if I don't know if it's going to shake out that way. And if it doesn't, that does it at least makes it difficult for Garland because,
Yeah.
like we said, there's Mitchell and Brunson that are shoo-ins. I think Trey has a really good case. I don't think that it's uh like I don't think that people are truly appreciating how hard it is to average over 12 assists a game in the NBA, even in the modern NBA.
Hmm.
Like,
People miss shots
uh,
a lot. They miss all your opportunities.
well, I went to StatMuse, which I know sometimes has its questions, but just to get an idea, this would be the 18th season that a player averaged 12 assists in a season, and of the 17 that came before him, that was spread out amongst just 5 different players. I mean, it truly is like historic playmaking that Trae Young is doing, which I think is enough to at least get you All-Star consideration. Like, it should be, right?
The shot against Utah counts for something. That's not his first clutch shot this year either.
Oh, for sure. That was bonkers.
Against Colin.
Yeah, and that's my high level of analysis that I'm gonna give that shot because that's the only thing I could think of when I saw it was just, well, that was bonkers.
Yeah. Did you watch it
Um,
live?
no, I didn't watch it live. I saw that one. Um, I think I saw the highlight, I believe, on social media, and then I went and watched like in more context, but I wasn't watching that one live.
I caught the last five. I caught the fourth quarter of that game. I had a lot of fantasy impact. I had Kessler, Hunter, and Trey. I have to watch that game. Kessler was dunking at every possession. All of a sudden, 3-point game. They botched the inbound. Then Colin hits his shot. No reason going into details. Colin. Everyone loves Colin. And then all of a sudden, Trey just scream that, which he really should get in. And obviously, he's been snubbed before. And I will also say this in the past, and we'll dive back in. I have not watched enough Hawks prior to the last two seasons to justifiably say what he is or isn't. I let everyone else's opinions tell me that Trey's not this, not that when he's averaging 27 and 10. And I watched probably 40% of the Hawks this year. Obviously, watching what they did to the Cavs. We're not going to say anything else nice about them yet because that's a dangerous play. But that man is an all-star. They don't have the best lineup. Risa Shea is learning. They have a lot of inefficient shooters. Bogdanovich is having a down year. Jalen Johnson's obviously stepped up in a big, let's give him credit, but the center position's been banged up for them all season. Risa Shea has been in and out. Hunter's been very in and out. So they were playing with a lot of backups earlier in the year. They lost their backup point guard who only played 7 games, Kobe Bufkin. So, and he still has them. Obviously, Garrison Matthews, shout out, insane shooter. But Trey sets the table for everybody. He has nights where he has 8 points and 15 assists. He has three 20-point, 20-assist games this year. I don't know how often that's ever been done before by a single guy in a single season. Stockton really wasn't doing that when he was getting his 20 assists. He was scoring 12. Same with Steve Nash. So he's just the modern gem he's flashy. A lot of people hate him because he does it to their team, but in big games, in the regular season at least, and occasionally in the playoffs, he still has to prove a little more to put up big numbers. He shows up. If he doesn't get in, if Garland gets in because Trey doesn't, it would feel like a victory, but also a massive L, which I hate to say, just because out of everyone on the list, if Trey's the one that gets snubbed, I could see that happening, and don't think that's cool.
Yeah, I feel like he's got one of the best cases to I guess split hairs over or
Yeah,
however you want to say you're debating between them. Damian Lillard is obviously just All-Star Game MVP. He's still Damian Lillard. He's still going for 25 and 7, which is flirting with top 10 range for both of those categories. And if we know anything about people when it comes to All-Star uh, counting stats matter. Um, and while I would take Garland, I at least understand that there's going to be a conversation there. If I look at some of the other guys just on there, Tyrese Maxey, I mean, you said it. I don't think he belongs there above Garland, but if you are going to have a sixer, he's the one, not
yeah,
the two that are actually getting votes in the front court. Cade
somehow.
Cunningham has been, yeah, no kidding. Cade Cunningham has been really good. And I think that the resurgence in Detroit really reflects a lot of um, kind of some of the questions that we had about Cade Cunningham in his first couple of seasons and some of the disappointments in Cade Cunningham in the first couple of seasons, not knowing what he could potentially look like in a winning environment and if a winning environment is even remotely possible in the city of Detroit for basketball.
Yep.
And they're they are proving that the answer to that is yes. Are they juggernauts and going to be contending in the East anytime in the next 2 seasons? No, but they've had a massive turnaround, and it's been very much on Cade Cunningham's back. He deserves serious consideration. And then I'm with you. Then to me, there's a step down once you get to guys like Hero and the Jordan Pooles of the world,
Yep.
just not playing. Uh, Jordan Poole is not playing meaningful basketball in any way. But the
No.
Garland case, while he doesn't have the counting stats necessarily, of those guys, they're not crazy off. 21
No.
and 7 in just 30 minutes a game, which is the lowest of his career.
High
He's won player of
efficiency.
the week twice now,
Yep. Gotta
which
say.
I don't think people are gonna like, you know, um, immediately think of and remember when it comes to this all-star case. But that's very true. And he's been crazy in the clutch. Jarrett Allen, I think, the ones that he's going against, you mentioned them. So many of these guys, they're not going to be there. They're not going to play. It's
Yeah. No, exactly. And it stinks for Paolo, who I think was a looking like top 15 player in the league before he got injured. So I think next season he's probably going to get in as a starter. Obviously the Knicks are very uh, they're dividing a lot of people in conversations, and honestly, it's nice to see that the fans also agree they need a new coach there, even though despite what they've done with winning, because he will not play anybody except for the starters, Precious Achua and Miles McBride, then I guess Mitchell Robinson when he gets healthy. I would not want to be a wing. There's a reason that the Knicks can't get free agents, and they've done most of it. But no, overall, the exception of Brunson. And then Randall did come in, but they're getting everyone by trade because they know that these guys would never willingly sign. If they can get them in the door, they know they can get them to stay. But you don't want to go to a situation to be a 2010s Bull where they're playing insane minutes, and it's gonna wear on them. And
yes.
Cat's had been an amazing year. He deserves his top three spot in the front court, I will say. He's also grabbing rebounds because the next tallest guy is 6'6" and they're not a big 6'6", not knocking OG and McHale, but they're both shooting guard, small forwards. We're playing small forward and power forward. Next to Carl, and the Big Bodega, a terrible nickname I keep seeing thrown around by NBA Central. They got to stop using it. But Bam's not an all-star this year. But I guess we just go back to the list. Giannis will start. Tatum will start. Cat will start. Jaylen Brown should get in. Franz missing way too many games to me. He'd be replaced anyway if he did get in. So I guess I guess you can't win an award if you can't play 65 games. I do like that, by the way. I do want to say I like the rule. But Embiid's not qualifying for anything. PG's not qualifying for anything. Jimmy's not qualifying for anything except for more expensive coffee. Uh, you know, uh, from the guys not even on this list, top of my head, there's no one from the Nets. Raptors won't get anybody this year. Siakam, Pacers fan say should get him, but he's averaging 20 and 7. I don't care that he's shooting 52%. He's not an all-star this season. Wizards have no all-stars. The Bulls have no all-stars. The Heat have no front court all-stars. Jalen Johnson should be absolutely considered despite not being on this list. I think he could be a name that could certainly threaten Allen's status, averaging like 20, 11, and 5, shooting pretty efficiently. The only knock on him for me has been his turnovers. But the Knicks will not get McHale or OG in that game. Mention nobody from the Magic. Pistons don't have any front court all stars. They may still have to reshape their front court to be an ultimate contender, and they'll certainly make some moves in the years to come. Sixers have no front court all stars with the injuries that they've dealt with, and there aren't many other teams. So I do think
No.
Allen has a good chance. And my closing thoughts, Zach, and then I'll
Yeah.
toss it right to you. Allen's last All-Star season, he averaged like 17 and 10. He's averaging 14 and 10. He's shooting 70%. We've seen some massive performances from him in recent weeks. He rises to the occasion. He's extremely efficient, and we've seen his playmaking to both Mobley and Garland in clutch situations over the last 3 weeks. And that's why 14 and 10, seeing last thing. Ben Wallace on that Pistons team averaged 7 and 11. Rashid averaged 15 and 7 and got in. Al Horford and Millsap averaged 17, 8 and 3. Horford averaged 15, 7 and 3. So he's not far off any of these guys. He should be the guy that gets it.
No, I agree with you. I was worried about Jarrett Allen and his opportunity before I started to really like break it down and look at positionally and like who he's going up against and these things. And I'm like, oh, he's got a way better shot than I thought he had. And now I'm even more amped and more into the idea of the Cavs legitimately being able to get four. I was thinking three all year long until probably a week ago when I really started looking at, like I said, the who was even getting considered in the fan vote to begin with. And I'm like, none of these guys are playing. None of these guys are going to be in the game. Who's he really got to beat out? And that list, as you put it, is very short. So I will leave people with this. If you want to play your part to get 4 Cavaliers into the All-Star game, here's a few things to keep in mind. One, you can vote every day on, through the NBA, NBA.com or in the app or whatever. This episode is going to be releasing on Thursday when there are 2 more days where your votes can be tripled. One of them is tomorrow, Friday the 17th, and the next one is Monday the 20th. And in addition to votes counting 3 times on that day, Monday, that's the final day to vote. So do your part in our 50% with the fan vote to try to get consideration for these all stars. Because while we're not going to be able to get all 4 of them in as starters, I have to imagine that the coaches who are making the decisions on reserves are at least taking into consideration, what the fans wanted to see, in the first place. So yeah, any closing thoughts? Any other parting words of wisdom other than go Cavs and go vote from you, Zach?
Yeah, I got 2 things. The first, never put too much emphasis on one regular season game, no matter how good or bad the opponent. This is coming out Thursday ahead of the Cavs playing the Thunder for the second time. Whether they win or lose that game,
Yeah.
don't put too much on it. Whatever the results of this second Pacer game are, I could be a little worried if they lose. So it'll be back-to-back losses to 2 different teams this season in those sets. But again, they'd still be 33-6. Relish the strong start is one, and number 2 is let them know. Let them know, let them know, let them know. Best motto in the league. I say it in my daily life. Girlfriend says it. She's become a Cavs fan. Just let them know. That's what it's about.
If you made it to the end, first of all, thank you. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star review on the podcast app that you're using right now. Or if you're watching on YouTube, like the video and let us know in the comments if you think the Cavs are actually going to get 4 All-Stars. Now that the episode has ended, go ahead and open your app store and download the Sports Ethos app for one of the best blurb feeds in the business. Cavs players, fantasy tools, news, updates, it's all there for you. And as always, I'm Zach. That was Zach. Thanks for nerding out with us, Cavs fans.